Well, I guess it's a nice little group, and the first thing we always do with a Buddhist group is, not necessarily all groups, but is we think about, we think about why we're here. We think about, why we came. And I'd actually like to know why you came, and what, before we do a sit down with our motivation, I'd kind of just like to know why you came and what you're interested in, because it's a small enough group that I can just talk to what your needs are and what your desires are and what you'd like to know about. And since it is a small group, we can do that. Is that all right with everybody? You're not too shy about saying a little bit, And then I'd also like to know if you're coming again, like on Saturday, or maybe you're waiting to see. So would you mind starting? Just tell me your name and
yeah, sure.
a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Chris. My life seems to be getting more spiritual. I've been going to therapy, and that's one thing. But another thing, I've just been into all spiritual stuff, drawn to Buddhism, and I guess I'm interested in the mind and how it sees what it sees in the world. Yeah. And when it gets that wrong, and is shared, a bit about that we share.
Yeah. Chris, right? Yeah. And I remember you, but I forgot your name. Sorry.
I'm Lynn.
Lynn. Oh yeah, you're Lynn. Okay, so yeah.
I met you when you came about a year ago when we were at your place. And I guess since then I've got more involved with Jamyang. I volunteer here now. And I also wanted to come. I'm here tonight and tomorrow and possibly Sunday because I got a lot out of your session last year.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, Charlotte's coming tomorrow, and she had to tell me what we did last year because I couldn't remember. So hopefully I can carry on a bit. She said we did a lot more exercises and physical things. And
yeah, certainly on the second day.
Yeah.
On the Sunday.
Yeah, so I should watch the video. I don't know if you videoed it last year, but I should watch them, so I can carry on, because I do a lot of different things and it's hard to remember.
There's a recording, there's a video.
Yeah, no, I don't ever remember video before. Maybe you did once with medicine or something. And Tim, what's brought you? And also, a little bit about your Dharma, like if you're new or not new, or how long and if you're brand new, that's fine.
I've considered myself a Buddhist since I was a teenager. I started meditating mainly in the Zen school. I've been coming to the FPMT since about 14 years, and it's a long way to go. I've learned a lot in that time. I feel very comfortable in this tradition, and I've met you before, and I enjoy your teachings, and the topics sounded very interesting. I'm here.
Hello, my name's Fiona. I've been around the Dharma for quite a long time as well, but still learning a lot to learn. So I enjoy Paula's teaching style. It's very open and relaxed and creative. So it's why I'm here and I'm interested in the topic as well. Trying to deepen my understanding of the age of mind.
And I'm Fiona as well. I've been coming to Jamyang probably for about 9 years. And I'm a volunteer helping to facilitate the session on a Monday night, but since the centre moved I've not been coming to teachings as often, and I just saw this in the programme and it sort of fitted in with my day and it looked interesting, so I thought, right, yeah, that's my Friday night sort of day.
So I'm David, and I've been coming here since day one. In fact, I actually first heard about Mahamudra in 1980, and I immediately thought, that's what I want to do. So every time I get the opportunity, I come. I mean, I had to be here anyway, but
It's really
not unwillingly.
You were dragged along.
My name's Gabriel, and I'm a friend of yours.
Oh, you're Lou's friend?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So because she talked about you so highly, the last time I saw her up at Land of Joy, I thought, 2 hours of my life, I better come down and see who you are.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice to meet you, because I've heard about you, and you know Anne as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Amaya. I have been doing yoga for quite a few years, but more from a relaxing at the end of the day of a working day rather than from a philosophical sort of point of view. And in the yoga classes we do relax, we do meditation and relaxation for about 10-15 minutes. And I'm really amazed when people say that has been meditating for 60 days. Which I found a real challenge, if it is at all possible. So I just thought, well, let's see what these guys do. And so I'm coming to see what is this about, and see what happened today, and maybe coming tomorrow, see if I can meditate for 1 day.
Yeah, well, we won't do a whole lot of meditating tonight, because it's Friday night and people have worked, and you know, I think we're more going to be just kind of questioning and investigating a bit, but we'll be doing more meditation on the weekend. And just so you know, I never thought I could meditate either. And when I went to an all-day session, because a friend of mine dragged me to this Tibetan Lama, I was shocked it wasn't that hard. And I think I was under the misunderstanding that many people were, maybe not so much now, because you know, mindfulness and everything's so important. So popular. I thought it was like, oh, you're supposed to stop your thoughts, you know. And I had so many thoughts, there's no way I was ever going to stop my thoughts. So I just thought, well, I'll never be able to meditate. Then I found out it's not about stopping your thoughts, it's just about looking at your thoughts. You know, and then it's not so hard, is it? And then that's easy enough. If you can just get yourself to sit down long enough, you know, that's all you got to do is be still. You know, and yoga makes that very easy, because yoga prepares the body to relax the mind, you know. And so usually in the corpse pose at the end, you know, you can usually get in a very nice meditative state just there. So, yeah, I think people think meditating is something big to do, but really it's just taking time out, you know. And I think we rest our bodies, it's nice to learn how to rest your mind. That's all, really. You know, just stop doing for a while, and just watching and witnessing. You know. So that's really, yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah. And
hello, I'm Joseph. I was brought here in a taxi today. No, I'm joking. No,
you got kidnapped, did you?
I did get a taxi here, yes. No, but I suppose it was kind of totally random how I've got here today. But I was browsing the internet last night and saw that there was a talk on this subject today, so I decided that sounded interesting. I'd head over this way, but I feel like actually a lot of my way of thinking has perhaps, without me knowing until very recently, actually falls in line with what I think Jamyang Buddhism and Zen philosophy in particular. So I'm planning to move back to Leeds, so I've actually come here to find a community to embed myself into.
Oh, that's really great.
But this is my first time being in
Oh, okay.
like this. So.
Well, that's really great. Well, hopefully you'll be able to come back. Let's see. And you must know each other then.
Yes.
Are you the friend that like kidnapped him and made him come?
Yes.
You just said yes.
What's your name?
I'm Keith.
Keith.
Yes.
Keith. Oh, Keith. Keith. Yeah. And I'm getting to know people and how much experience they have, so I can kind of figure out what to do tonight. So, you want to share, Keith?
It was Joseph what told me about tonight.
So you're both new then?
Yes, it was all a bit of a rush.
Yeah.
I've been to the wrong address actually. does it?
Yeah. It is a bit out of town, but once you get here, it's really nice, isn't it?
I was in the centre of Leeds.
Yeah. Well, this place used to be in the centre of Leeds.
Did it?
Well, not this place, but this group.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all a bit of a, yeah.
Well, we'll just, I think the first thing we'll do is we'll just do a little bit, you remember from last year, to just calm down a little bit and just get here. And we have you, or?
Hi, my name's Lisa. I've been dabbling in another nutrition for 15 years, but more seriously the last 2 years with MPT.
Yeah.
I'm very happy because I moved to Leeds and the centre was here, so I was super happy about that. Really interested in the topic, but particularly at the moment I did the from the Venerable Buddha and Mahamudra, so that convinced me I don't really know anything about it.
But I mean, she didn't really teach Mahamudras what I was taught.
Not a huge amount, it's just a lot of Lambrian preparation.
Yeah.
You did some Mahamudra, not huge.
It was fascinating, but
Yeah.
just I obviously, you know, it's a difficult topic to get your head around, so
It's
always
not
good to
that
learn.
difficult, really. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here to learn more about it.
Yeah. And then Anne?
And I'm here mainly because she's staying with me tonight. I'm going to get her home tonight. But I've technically been in the Dharma since about 1981, and I met that gentleman around about, well, not long after that, I think, and have rubbed alongside FPMT and all of that, and been through various travails, and even lived at Manjushri Institute in the good old days. There were good old days. But latterly, I've actually been with another lineage, and I'm a Kaju practitioner now, and Kajus practice mainly Mahamudra, so I come along as a spy.
It's kind of cool doing that sometimes.
Oh, it's I learn a lot.
I did that before. And Bob Smith said to me, "How does it feel being somewhere else?" And I went, "Liberating." I didn't have to make the coffee.
Well, Anne's studying now with Mingyur Rinpoche. Many of you have seen his books, and the big, he's got a big splash these days, you know, it's like the big celebrity on the block pretty much, because he's really helping people, and I think people are fascinated with this trip. You know, he was supposed to do a 3-year retreat, and he just disappeared, and he just wandered around India for 3 years. And
4.5.
It was 4.5 years, and there's a book out now about it that's a lot of people are finding very, very interesting. So if you are interested in Mahamudra, you might want to look into Mingyur Rinpoche, because he is teaching a nice gradual kind of way of getting into it. And of course there's Lama Yeshe's book out there, which I highly recommend as well. But before we get, you probably want to know about me.
Yes.
My name's Paula, and I've been interested in Buddhism for a long time. I got interested actually in high school, like you, interested in Zen. So that was a long time ago. It was like 50 years ago or more. And I didn't really attend Zen things because, like I said, I thought I had to stop my thoughts, you know. And I thought, and Zen always kind of intimidated me because it seemed cold and they hit you on the back, and you know. But I loved the books, and I used to read all the Zen books, and had friends who were Zen practitioners. But then I got interested, and the Tibetans came along a bit later, you know. There weren't Tibetans in the 60s very much. And that helped me because when I met Lama Yeshe, we didn't just sit and watch our breath. He gave us stuff to do with our minds. And that really helped me because I did have a very active mind, and the way it worked is, you know, many of you are familiar with sadhana practice, but it was a Chinreze practice where it wasn't my first Tibetan teacher, but it kind of like you used your mind to the point where your mind turned off. And Lama was always teaching Mahamudra, and he was such a skillful teacher that I can remember just sitting there with Lama and experiencing that my mind was like, you know, do you remember when you were a kid and you'd skip rocks on a lake and they go chick, 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 chick. And when it hits it, you know, it makes these little ripples going out on the water. And sitting in Lama Yeshe's presence, I just felt my mind just like that. It was amazing. You know, I just felt like my mind was the big, big lake or sea. And every time a thought came, it was just a little ripple in the water, you know, the little, like the little rock, you know, like that, you know. And it was such a profound experience to me to feel that spaciousness, you know, that I just wanted, it just really turned my mind. And he was such an amazing teacher. I don't know, because I've been to other Tibetan lamas, and it was the story where they say something and there's a translator, and they say something, there's a translator, and I just kind of thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. But it was Lama Yeshe that I had the experiences that made me realize that mind is more than just what's going on in my head. And that is Mahamudra, you know. Mahamudra is experiencing there's, I won't get into it too much, but the fact that actually what we're looking to experience in the nature of mind is just the relative nature of mind, is just that space from which thoughts and feelings come and go. And for most of us, we're always feeling and thinking, and there's never any space. And I think that was the most wonderful thing about Lama Yeshe, is somehow because of him, my thoughts just stopped. And I don't know how many of you have ever had the experience where your thoughts just stop and you're just like in space, you know? It's a wonderful feeling. And I mean, some of us had it maybe drug-induced. I think, you know, especially my generation, we took psychedelics, and, you know, they sometimes would get you into that space. And also that kind of sense that everything's connected to everything else. You know, that sense that everything seems separate, but it's not separate. You know, everything that on some level we know that we're connected to everybody else and everything else. And it's more of an innate feeling than an intellectual feeling. But I think particularly if you enjoy being in nature, you can experience that sense in nature that I'm part of this, and we're all part of something bigger. And so that's kind of what happened to me. And then I guess you can just say karma, if you know. I mean, I just decided that's what I needed to do. And I think it was because I was already interested in the mind, and way even back then, you know, in the 70s, I was a bit like Rita, how do you say her name, Thunberg, the latest, you know, bodhisattva around trying to save the planet, and that I was a young person that was very passionate about climate change. Way back then, you know, we knew about all that. We knew what was going on. We knew about pollution and cancer, and I was at the University of California at Berkeley and working in courses that taught that, you know, that were much more connected with radical politics and radical politics of environmental education. I guess before many other, I mean, it's kind of where it started, you know, a lot of that started there with John Muir and the Sierra Club. And so I was in a program at the university where we were trying to find ways to stop all this crazy engineering that creates technologies and soft technologies and hard technologies that destroy the planet. And the professor that I had was very interested in the mind, because he figured that it was the minds of the engineers and the biologists and whatever was the problem, that they didn't think expansively enough. And they were only thinking with reductionist, you know, 1 + 1 is 2, and you create these things, but no one, you know, these technologies or these ideas or these, but no one's thinking about what happens down the road or how it affects everything else. And being an ecologist and the study of ecology, which is what I studied at university, it's already like Dharma because everything's connected to everything else. It's all about dependent arising, and how when you study an ecosystem, you know, it's all about how everything's related. And so it was already very Dharma oriented, and what he was getting us to think about was, where does the human fit in that? You know, because scientists are always kind of stepping back and looking at it rather than being part of it. And so if you were to allow yourself to be one of the elements in the ecosystem, how would that be different? And how would you maybe even think about expanding your mind? So he would give puzzles and different, like I remember these kind of things where you might remember where, like those Escher things where what's the background and what's the foreground, you know? Because most people are just interested in, you know, if the foreground, like, you know, this, maybe those things where someone like writes the word fly. Have you ever seen that? And you don't know if you look at it, it just looks, because it's turned around, you see the background and you think the background is what you're looking at, and it takes a while to see that you're actually looking at the word fly. Do things like that to try to get people to see that there's more than just what you see. And that in order to, like, quote, save the planet, we had to start developing minds and people that could think outside the box, as they say, you know. And so that's how I kind of got into Buddhism, because I thought, well, that's going to teach us how to think outside the box, you know. And very soon after that, I met Lama Yeshe, and then I just forgot about all that and just thought that maybe that actually Dharma was the answer to our social problems, because if we could begin to think how everything's connected to everything else, and then plus the idea of altruism, that you're supposed to be thinking about the welfare of others, it might solve a lot of these social, political problems, economic problems that we have, namely capitalism, and the model that isn't serving us anymore. But of course, it's 40 years later now, nothing's really changed. In fact, it's gotten worse. However, the Dharma has begun to proliferate, and now I just think, well, maybe through the dark times, if we can just keep a little bit of this wisdom alive, because there's definitely, seems like dark times are coming, because no one seems to be able to reverse what's going on. And I hope it will. But what I've found with Buddhism is it's such a precious way of experiencing life that if we can at least begin to preserve it in whichever ways we can. And Lama Yeshe really entreated us, as those of you who knew him, to, it's not about Tibetan culture. You know, he would say to us, you have to come and make it something that will fit in your own culture. And I think 40 years later, we're still struggling with how to do that, because our teachers are Tibetan, and they like to do everything the Tibetan way. And so it's kind of our job to penetrate through that and pick out what's useful to us in our society and in our world. And we can do that, and there are teachers who do that. And I'm not saying it's not wonderful to study with the Tibetans. It is wonderful to study with the Tibetans. But it comes from a very ancient culture that didn't have environmental problems that we have now. And so we sort of have to think about how we can use this. And the wonderful thing, I think, is that what has happened in the last 30 years is that at least there's been a revolution in psychology. There's so much Buddhism in psychology now, because so many psychologists found so much benefit in Dharma, that it's quite popular now, this idea about nature of mind and emotional intelligence. I mean, Daniel Goleman is he's a Buddhist, you know, and there are lots of these different modern psychologists are Dharma practitioners, and so we're seeing it coming into the secular world in all kinds of different ways, and it seems to me that's kind of the way it's going to have to go. But at the same time, we want to preserve the very Tibetan essences of it, because that's where the good juice is, you know. So, you know, that's enough of that. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from, and so I quit doing anything else and just studied Dharma for a whole lot of years, and because I just thought it was really important, and I was very passionate about it. So, yeah. So let's just sit for a minute, and what I'd like you to do is just, if you've never sat, have you ever meditated before? a little bit. How about you? What's your name again?
Keith.
Keith and Joseph, right? So I think what we're going to do is just to kind of be here. And I mean, it's already 7:15. You want to go to about 8 o'clock? Is that enough time? How long do you want to do this evening tonight? We'll see. What?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were. What's on the program is 8:30.
8:30, okay.
You know what?
Well, it's just I don't want to. We'll have to take a break or something. We'll see how it goes. But one thing I learned, I think I taught last year, I forgot, but Charlotte reminded me, is these taps. Since we've all come from different places, I'm going to show you these. It's something from what's called emotional freedom technique. And it's a very simple way to you just tap these places on your face, and it just helps the mind to calm down. Because the main thing about Mahamudra meditation is relaxing. Because if we can completely relax our mind, then the mind will show you what the mind is. We don't really have to do anything to do Mahamudra meditation. What we have to do is we have to learn to just do nothing and just pay attention, and be satisfied with what's coming and going in our minds. And just that's the most basic thing. And it's pretty much basic to Zen meditation, and most meditations is just this very beginning thing about learning just to be present, just being in the present moment. Because what we find is that we're always either thinking about the future, or ruminating about the past, or imagining something, just being in some kind of imaginatory land, thinking about something. Because for some reason, I mean, I have my own agenda why, but I won't get into that now. We don't like to just be. We don't have the habit of just being still and watching our mind and letting the mind relax. The mind, and I think it just might be our hardware, because we evolved with saber-toothed tigers and marauding killers, and so we're kind of there's that fight or flight kind of looking around the corner, because if I'm a parent or a child, anybody, we always have to be careful about what's coming up. And so I just think it's how we evolved, that we don't really have minds that are just so peaceful. But it's also, I think our modern life has made it even more so. And just in the last 10 years, it's even more so, because we've always got something to be distracted. So the question is why would we not want to be distracted? And why would we want to quiet our mind? And that's something we can think about. I mean, are you interested in learning to have a more quiet mind, or what? I mean, why would you come to a thing like this?
Yeah, I've read things about a similar sort of thing, the quieting of the mind and all.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do that.
Yeah, but are we interested? As a group of people, are we interested in a more peaceful mind? Is that why we're here? How to have mental peace
And clarity.
Yeah, and clarity. Because we kind of have to know. I said we talked about our motivation. We have to do that before we start, because I didn't really hear your motivation why you were here. You just said that you were here.
I think connection as well.
Hmm?
Connection as well. I think having a calm mind, clear mind, then you're able to connect.
With other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I guess we're quite isolated these days, aren't we, in our lives? People live very much isolated lives with their virtual friends on their phones and stuff, right? Yeah, so we have this idea of Sangha, isn't it, community? And hopefully that's what's growing here, with some kind of community. And now you have a great space to do that. You can even have parties here. So I think the motivation is for self. Usually it's for ourselves, but it's also for others. That's what you mean by connection. So I think for our own mind, I think at least why I was interested in Dharma was to find a calm place and feel that interconnectedness more strongly. And I think for me also, have a little bit more control over what happens to me. You know, instead of just being blown by emotional of this and that, and this comes and that comes, and you know, just kind of being a leaf in the wind of whatever emotions are coming. I wanted to have some more stability in my mind. So I think we're looking for calmness, some clarity, some stability, some peace. And I think what's even maybe more important is love, right? Love. We all want to feel love, and I think that's what you mean by connection. Is we need to be safe from saber-toothed tigers, but we also are hardwired to have community and have people that we love.
I think it's difficult to do that if your mind's racing and you're thinking about yourself and thinking about the saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
It's more difficult to actually listen to other people
That's right.
and focus on them.
And so by learning to calm the mind down, we have more space to listen to others, but also to listen to ourselves, because I think that things are so fast these days that we're just going from reaction to reaction to reaction. And part of it is needing a sense of a place to land in a way, you know, like a place to be at home. I find that I think part of what attracts me to Dharma is a sense of being at home with myself. You know, because I think one of the reasons that we are so preoccupied with all kinds of other things and also with ourselves is that if we stop, we're not really at home with who we are. You know, if we stop being preoccupied with other stuff, what does it feel like? Is it just busy inside? Is it uncomfortable inside? What's it like? Maybe that'll be our first little exercise, is when I finally stop talking. So we're looking for these things, and then but something that's very important in Mahayana Buddhism is that we're not just doing this for ourselves alone. It's important that we work on ourselves, but the bigger idea is because we do live in a greater community, and we want everyone to have more experience of love in their lives, and more interconnectedness, and more peace. And so I think it's quite clear now, a lot of the scientists have established, and we all know, that if I feel good, it makes the people around me feel good. And because you know, when you're around a depressed person, if you've got one person in your office that's a bummed out person, it kind of brings everybody down. And so the opposite of that is that if I can be a calm, joyful presence, even if I don't do anything or don't say anything, if I just feel good about myself inside myself, it radiates out to everyone, and it makes everyone happier, you know. And so I think a lot of our job is not only to find inner peace, but also to find inner self-acceptance and inner love. Because there's an author I like to read named Mark Epstein, who's written quite a few books on, he's a Buddhist, he's a psychiatrist in New York City. And he's been around a long time too. And I remember reading a book of his a long time ago, and he said, the reason we like being in love is because it unburdens our ego. You know, because we're always got this me going on, you know, I've got to do this, and that kind of brings a sort of insecurity that's happening. There's always this feeling of this insecurity, you know, like, I'm not good enough, I have to, I think that's one of the reasons why it's hard for us to sit and be quiet, because if we sit and be quiet, we're just stuck with me, you know, and it's not always that pleasant, myself. You know, my self-image is not, I don't feel at home within myself, you know, I don't feel comfortable, and so why am I going to sit and just feel it? It doesn't feel good, you know. So that sense of unburdening of the ego doesn't necessarily, you don't have to have another person to love. You don't have to be in love to feel love. And I think that's a big revolution. But if you think about it, if those feelings of love come from my mind, then it has nothing to do with that person. It's my mind that's making me feel love, isn't it? Do you agree? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's good there's, you know, I mean, we have some karma with this person, they make me happy, and other people don't. But still, that experience of love is coming from my mind. So why can't I tap into that without anybody around? Why can't I just allow myself to feel love anytime I want? And make myself feel warm and fuzzy and comfy and relaxed, you know? Well, the truth is you can, you know? It just takes a little bit of training and a little bit of work and, not work, I shouldn't say that, just a little bit of discipline. Saying, you know, knowing that this is my goal, I want to have this experience, I want to feel that, I want to feel open and loving and kind and have a way to deal with these unpleasant emotions. And the good news is it isn't that hard. We just need a technique and we need the inspiration. And I think in my case with Lama Yeshe, I had a taste of it. And once you get a taste of it, then you realize, I can do this. You know, it might not happen all the time. It might only happen infrequently in the beginning. But I can tell you, you know, after years of practice, if I sit down, I can just do that now. You know, it took me a long time. So it doesn't, I mean, but that's me. Maybe it'll take somebody less time. But it's just such a gift to be able to just be. I mean, I'm not saying I don't get, I mean, Anna's been with me the last few days. She knows I'm kind of stressed about stuff. But deep inside, it's always okay, you know, because if I sit down and just let everything go, you know, so nothing is so terrible that I can't handle it. I mean, things get pretty bad sometimes, you know. And I'm not at the point where when I'm not meditating, it doesn't feel so good. But when I'm meditating, everything's okay, you know. And so, in Buddhism, we talk about refuge. I think we've all known about refuge. And Lama Yeshe used to say that the real refuge is, you know, in a refuge. And that's what we're creating. That's what we're creating, that space where we have a refuge. And I remember Wendy Ridley, years and years ago, I was in India and she was SPC or something. This is a long, long time ago. She was a young, beautiful blonde girl. She was leading the meditation and she said, you know, refuge is like a rabbit being chased by a fox and he finds his home and he gets inside and he's safe. You know, that always stuck with me, you know, it's like being safe. We all need to feel safe. That's, you know, one of the famous psychologists of the 60s was Abraham Maslow, and he talked about 5 human needs. And the first one is to feel safe. And so what's so wonderful about refuge is that you can learn to feel safe wherever you are. And I think it begins with an outer refuge. You know, it begins with we have to study the teachings and learn the teachings and meditate on the teachings. But what Lama Yeshe made so clear is that, but really the whole thing, you know, because we take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in Buddha's teachings, we take refuge in our community, we have to have a teacher, we take refuge in all these 4 things. But the whole point of it, the whole point of having a teacher is because the teacher will help you find your own inner refuge. And then after that, once you get a taste of it, you just cultivate it. That's why it's called cultivation. You know, cultivation of bodhicitta, cultivation of wisdom. And so, so in Dharma we have kind of 2 sides of it. You know, there's one that's we're always cultivating this sense of love and compassion for others. That helps us to relax and let go. But then on the other side is this beginning to understand, which is what the topic was supposed to be about tonight, about how mind works and how mind exists. Because the more, it's very simple, the more you begin to understand about your mind, the more you begin to realize that everything that comes in your mind is just an impermanent feeling or an impermanent thought. And because we're wired the way we are, our minds are, you know, it just holds on to these things. And so we think they're real. You know, some kind of insult comes at you and you, oh, I'm hurt, and you hold on to it, and I hate that person, oh, and pretty soon you're all screwed up inside, you know. But with meditation practice, you can just go, oh, that person just, I can feel that, and I can go, oh, I can let that go. Might take a little while, but I know I can let it go. And all I have to do is sit down and do some breathing exercises, and it's gone. And so we don't have to be slaves to emotions and thoughts. I like to think of it as Buddhism is a path to emotional freedom. And as Anne and I were talking this morning, another one of the teachers I really like is Aung San Suu Kyi, and he said one time in teachings that our goal is to not be defeated by our circumstances. And I know we have very challenging circumstances. I know if you've had a very challenging circumstance. We all have very challenging, and of course I'm not in Syria and I'm not in a refugee camp, and I don't know, it might be pretty difficult there. But most of us aren't in such challenging circumstances, but we all do have challenges. And so I would say what Buddhism really is about is we have this eventual goal of total emotional freedom and the ability to be limitlessly compassionate and wise and able to benefit others. But along the way, we can begin to learn the techniques for not being defeated by difficult circumstances or even pleasant circumstances, and how to transform what comes our way into something that is beneficial for us, no matter what it is. And I remember another friend of mine, a long time ago, can't even remember his name at the moment. He lived in India for a long time. He was an Englishman, lived in London. His name will come in. Michael Parrott is his name. He was a translator. And Michael Parrott told me one time, he said, Dharma is just about, he says, all it is things come at us. We have experiences. And Dharma is just creating the space in our mind to react to those experiences in a different way. He said, we can't do anything about the experiences that are going to come to us. That karma, if you think about karma. We can't do anything about the fact that we might, walk out the door and get hit by a car, whatever. Or fall in love and then it's the wrong person. Or whatever it is, or inner things, we don't like certain things about ourselves. But he said, but what we can do, what we do have control over, is how we react to those things. How we respond to that, Are we going to put Lamiyesh used to say, are you going to put yourself in a concentration camp? Or are you going to choose liberation? And the thing we need to know is we do have choice. We are not slaves to our habitual responses to things. And I know that it's not as easy as I'm talking about it, because our patterns are very ingrained. And a lot of times we do need therapy, and a lot of times we need a lot of help. But the basic Buddhist practice is just beginning to make space in your mind and beginning to understand the nature of your mind, and just to know that what I experience isn't necessarily what is. That I can change my perception and have a completely different experience. And we know that because we know we've done that already, and also we know that no two people, like right now, you're all having all different interpretations of what's going on. We're all different. We all experience through the filters of our previous experiences, because we're all not just this life, but we all have all our childhood stories that we've told ourselves our whole lives, and everything we experience comes in through all those filters. And so part of what Buddhism is about is learning to know what those filters are, beginning to recognize, what's my particular style, what's my pattern, how do I react to this, which is why psychology is very helpful. And then when things come up, you just go, oh, I'm doing that again. how silly is that? I'm doing that one again. You know, I'm going to beat up on myself about this again. You know, do we all do that? Or I'm going to just be ignorant and pretend it's not happening again, rather than address it. Or I'm just going to run away again. Or I'm just going to, all the ways that we've learned to cope with life that don't serve us anymore. And so part of what we do and why meditation isn't just stopping our thoughts, is that we have to get to know our thoughts. We want to get to know ourselves very well and what our particular habit patterns are, and see, oh, every time somebody says this to me, I do this. You know, and just see that, that's not so smart, is it? Maybe I could do something else. And so that's why we meditate, to get to know ourselves. And I think the most important thing is to get to be our own best friend. Because most of the time when we sit down to meditate, we're not our own best friend. We're our own best critic. We're just full of all the things that our school teachers and older brothers and sisters and my parents, you know, you should be doing this, or why don't you like that, or you should do like that, or you should be like this, or just the things we inherited from the families we grew up in. And especially oh, I can't do this and I can't do that because that's what my mother did, or that's what my father did. And what we have to know, that none of these things are us. You know, we have the choice to be something completely different than what we were habituated to. And so really, you know, Dharma is just about changing our internal habits. And it takes work. There's no doubt about it. And you have to be willing to, go through some changes around it. How I see it now is the first step is getting to know yourself and making friends with yourself and stop judging yourself. And it doesn't mean that we just point blank go, oh, that's okay. Whatever you do is okay. I'm not saying that. You know, we have to be, I mean, in Buddhism there's definite moral behaviors. We want to be ethical. We don't want to harm anybody. You know, we don't want to cause harm at all because that'll come back to us. It's not good for us. Especially because we're all connected. So the more we harm, the more harm there is. But what's important is to just begin to watch what happens in our mind and learn to relax, learn to let go, and then just pay attention. Just start paying attention. And I think the most basic meditation, which I resisted in the very beginning because it was so damn boring, you know, but just starting to pay attention, what we call in Dharma we call awareness. You know, just and I think in the beginning we don't even have it because we're just always, one with what's going on. You know, there's something that comes, we're there, something that, But with meditation, you begin to develop that sense of a witness. You know, there's someone watching what's going on. You know, and then you even begin to watch the watcher. You know, and then eventually, if you're lucky, then all that can kind of just dissolve into space, and then you're just sitting in this nice kind of spacious awareness. But that comes a little bit later on. But the first thing is just being willing to just sit there and look. And I think that 5 minutes is good, 10 minutes is good, not trying too hard. So I think what we'll do now is I'll do this little tapping, and then we'll just do a very simple breathing practice, and then we'll stop and break up, because I just want to ask you a few questions. So does that sound, we're a small enough group, you can veto anything you want to do, right? Does that sound like a good plan? Anybody want to say anything? You can also be democratic. Do you want to say something? Lisa, right? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to show you these taps because they do help to settle the mind from, getting taxis and being late or whatever. So you take I just learned about this on the radio, and then 10 years later found out it's a whole school of psychology called emotional freedom technique. But you start with your fingers like this, and you tap on your eyebrows. And you're just going to, Keith, you can sit in a chair if you'd rather, whatever more comfortable. And while you're tapping on your eyebrows, I just want you to start paying attention to how you breathe. And everyone who's got pants on that are tight around, let's stop tapping for a minute. If your pants are tight, you need to undo the top button. Because the first thing that happens in meditation is we need to breathe into our bellies. So I want you to, this is not a time for worrying about being fat. You want you to just let your belly just stick out. Remember Buddha had a big belly, remember? So now let's go back to the taps, because I want you to be, I will ask you to, as you're tapping, just start paying attention to your breathing. And feel the breath going all the way down into the belly. And just turn your mind inward. Close your eyes. And imagine that you can bring your mind right down into your belly. And even imagine that as you inhale, you're breathing and you're filling up the belly. And as you exhale, that exhale and all this extraneous energy in your body is going to go down through the base of your spine and into the earth. So we're breathing into our belly and imagine that the exhale is going down in the earth. Everybody with me? And then you take your tapping down to just below your eyes, and let the chin slightly tuck down a little bit, and keep breathing into the belly. And then in front of at the top of the jaw, in front of the ears, right on the side, and do this in kind of hard, right here, in front of where your jaw is. You know where your jaw, it's tight usually, tight jaws. You feel that? Kind of right in front of your ears, top of the jaw. Does everybody feel that? It's kind of sore place. And breathing. And then you just take one hand and tap under the nose. And then move down to just below your teeth, the chin. And tap for kind of hard, not soft tap. And then your chest. You can use both like this, all on the chest. And just breathe in, just like things go. Just breathe up into your chest. Oh, just expand, not only your belly, but just really feel your chest opening up, like breathe up high in your chest. And then you take the backs of your fingers. I mean, not the backs of your fingers, just do what I'm doing. Like this. So these are all major acupuncture meridians. And then just drop your hands on your knees. And you can close your eyes. And again, just breathe into your belly. And now we're just going to watch our breath. And you can pay attention on the in-breath, feeling your breath going in and feeling your belly. And then when you exhale, just kind of let go. And don't worry if your mind's thinking about stuff. Just keep thinking about the breath. Not even thinking about it, but it's more like let your mind focus on the breath and feel the feeling, concentrate on the feeling of the inhale going down into your belly and the exhale letting go. And when your mind wanders, you just bring your attention back to feeling, not really watching, but feeling that breath filling up your lungs. And imagining that it goes down into the earth when you exhale. And just be aware of your body, just notice that you've got feet and legs, knees. Feel yourself sitting on the cushion. Arms and head. it's just relax. It's pretty long now. So I know a lot of people have been meditating for a while, but it's always good to just do something very simple and very short. But I'm curious, how is that for you, Joseph and Keith? Go.
Yeah, it was relaxing. Nothing really sprang to mind. I think I was just feeling my clothes on me and enjoying the sensations in my body.
Yeah, just paying attention, because all we really want to do is just start paying attention. And when we start paying attention to our, in the first place, it's obvious we just pay attention to our body. What's going on in the body. And Gabrielle, I think, would you be more comfortable if you had a pillow under your feet? So not just,
No, I'm fine.
You're fine, okay.
Yeah.
What
I
about-
used to sit on the stool
Yeah.
with my, with my feet back
okay.
like that.
So
So I just put my feet.
Would you be better in a chair? We can get a chair for you.
That's alright,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. Might not be able to walk afterwards.
Well, that's what I mean, because we can get a chair, I mean, lots of people sit in
No,
chairs.
I'm cool. I'm cool, thanks.
So, okay, you want to try just a little bit more? Because I'd like to add just something, maybe try and then try something else. Okay, so let's just go back to breathing in the body, just paying attention. And if you like, you can keep your eyes open and look straight at the ground. That also helps us to have awareness, because if we meditate with our eyes open and we start developing awareness with our eyes slightly open, we're not really looking at anything, just let the eyes be open and kind of taken, then it's easier to take that awareness out into the world when we have our eyes open. So it's just whatever more comfortable for you. And without leaving this sense of just being aware of what's going on, and I hope it's not adding too much, I'd like you to just think about someone or some animal, some person that you love. And just bring that person to mind. Someone that makes you happy, maybe it's, your grandmother, or if you have a child, and just think about, not necessarily thinking, but just tune into the feeling. Just try to generate that feeling and feel that feeling of that person that you love. And it might be a lot of people. Just recollect that sense of love. If you can, and if you can't, that's all right. You just imagine it. One day it'll happen. But bring to mind some memory of love. And kind of connect that with the area of your chest, your heart. Even though we're still breathing into the base, the belly. You can also, as the belly fills up, first the belly fills up, the breath goes to the belly, but then it comes up into the heart, into the chest. And when it reaches the chest area is when it kind of touches that heart and sparks or flashes a sense of love for someone. And then as you breathe out, you just completely relax again and just pay attention. relax again. Did that have a different quality the second time than the first time? Did you notice a difference?
Mm.
And you know, it's also the thing that's really helpful about meditation is the posture. If you can sit with your chest open, it really helps a lot, particularly with you know, these kind of meditations. Because I know, I mean, I'm myself too. I mean, we kind of, you know, go around like this all the time. But if we can learn to sit with this, it helps a lot to relax, actually, because it opens the heart. But the reason, I just think it's good to do little short bits in the beginning. But so well, let's go back to it. But what I'd like you to kind of think about is the idea that there's this constant breathing going in and out, right? And we want to make that what we're aware of is our focus in the beginning. It's just, we're just beginning to get some awareness of the breathing. And the reason why the breathing is so important, to get some kind of sense of awareness and groundedness in breathing, is because we're breathing all the time. So if we can learn to hook into our breathing and make that our kind of grounding beginning of refuge, or that home base, so to speak. Do you have home base here? You guys don't play baseball. But you know what home base means, right? It's when you come, in baseball you go around, you come home, you know. I don't know. I don't know how else to say it, but...
It's the name of a hardware store over here.
Oh yeah, well anyway, it means when you're safe. You know, in baseball, like they're trying to get you out, you run and you get into home base and they can't hit you with the ball anymore, or whatever they do.
We call it rounders.
Rounders? Yeah.
We do, don't we?
Yeah, we do, we do.
We play rounders.
Okay, well when you get, what do you call it when you get home, when you get to where you started?
A relief.
I don't know, I can't remember, it was at school.
But anyway, you know, when you get back, you know, it's like home, you know, it's like, that's your baseline, you know. And so then when you're, and if you can, this is why I think breathing, after being, you know, a galupa for 100 years, you know, this breathing thing is so important, because if you can make that sort of a constant in your life, then when you're out in the world and you're just doing something like non-eventful, like you know, standing at the bus or waiting for the train or standing in line at the grocery store, you can go back to focusing on your breathing. And so then meditation becomes something that goes on all the time. And then if you can make that breathing also an experience of breathing in love, then it's the beginning of this, creating this inner safe place that you can go to all the time. But it's just got to be a habit, you know. And then eventually, you know, after you get that going, then you can add all the other things like meditating on looking for the eye and meditating on equanimity. But to get this very basic practice is the foundation that everything else is based on. And without this, it doesn't carry through into your daily activity as well. So it's very important. And you know, you don't have to sit up and meditate, you know. I mean, most of the time I just do it in bed when I wake up in the morning now. But this thing of coming home, of feeling your body, being in your body, and breathing, and connecting that with an open heart is for me the place to start. And then we can work with these other things. So let's go back and try it a little bit more, because what I'd like, the way it works for me is, you know, we all like music, right? Everybody listens to music. Well, if you listen to a band or a symphony or whatever, if there's more than just one person, you know, if it's a band, there's always a rhythm section, isn't there? There's the bass, guitar, and the drums, and they form the main, you know, the most basic part of the music. And then you have the melody, and you know, the piano comes in, and the singer, and it's all this other stuff. So I find a nice analogy for meditation is your breathing is your rhythm section. And what's happening in your mind, all the thoughts, you know, all these thoughts, that's just the melody. But what you want to focus on is just, because you know, if you don't have a good rhythm section, you don't have a band. You know, just it's all based on the rhythm section, and everybody follows the rhythm section. I mean, the bass guitar and the drums are the most important thing, you know, to keep the band together. Anyway, so in terms of mind, this is the basic thing, and because when you focus on that, then what's going on in your mind becomes more extraneous. And then you're free to just kind of look at it, like, because the most basic teachings on Mahamudra is the mind is like the sky, and thoughts are like the clouds in the sky. And so if you want to get to that space where instead of being the cloud, which is where we are now, you know, our cloud comes and I'm 100% one with that. Basically, we're either accepting something, we like something, or we don't like it, or we just ignore it. And so we're in a constant state of, I like this and I don't like this. It's just more complicated. And so that's always going on, accepting, rejecting, accepting, rejecting. And so one way to get beyond accepting and rejecting into this just more spacious sense of self, that then eventually just even that becomes spacious, we need this basic kind of grounding thing, so that then thoughts have, there's something else other than thinking and feeling going on. Does that make sense? And it's just something, just this very basic sky that we're looking for, you know, this very basic ability to know, to feel, because what we have to do is we need, right now we're so much in our heads, it's so helpful to come down into your body, because then your experience just becomes a felt sense, and you become something more than just your thoughts. And the more you can bring, because there's another Rinpoche, I can't remember, he said, wherever there's blood, there's mind. Your mind just isn't this thing in your head that's, or this thing in your heart that's broken, you know, it's just, it's everywhere. So the more you can begin to work with breathing into the belly, feeling it going down your legs, feeling it going down to the earth, then this tendency to concretize and grasp, and this is happening to me right now, you know, it doesn't have quite the grasping. It opens up a bit more, because you just, very simply, you just spread it out all over your body. It's so, you know, it's like a no-brainer in a way, you know, it's an easy thing to do, and that's why, who was it, your friend wanted to go swimming, because she didn't want to come here tonight, she had a really bad day, she wanted to go swimming. Well, that's really smart, because you notice how relaxed you are when you finish? It's because your mind's gone everywhere in your body. And you've gotten all that energy, you know, because mind is just energy. Thoughts are just energy. And one of the things we learn later on in meditation is, rather than get up in the content of the thought, but if you just feel the energy of it and do the breathing work, then the energy will dissipate, and so will the emotion. So it's like, it was a thing I've talked about at the very beginning about my professor, Arnold. You know, he was always, people are always interested in the thing rather than the space, the context that it arises in. You know, we're always interested in grasping onto what's in the box rather than what's outside the box, you know. So what we're trying to do then is focus on the space where the feelings and the thoughts come from.